Okay. Guys, tonight we're going to talk about the current state of health in America as it relates to what just happened 2 weeks ago with the USDA coming out with its brand new food guide and the food pyramid. Every 5 to 7 years or so, it changes. And I'm going to talk about what we've had in the past and what we currently have as of 2 weeks ago and why that impacts us here in America. But first of all, I wanted to go through some statistics that John F. Kennedy Jr. spoke about in the State of the Union, basically, not really called a State of the Union, but he stood up in front of the press and basically gave this speech. And all of his statistics I wrote down. And I thought these were really interesting. And so I wanted to share them with you guys tonight. At the end of the slides, I'll have all of them listed on one slide. So you guys don't need to write them down. You can just take a picture with your phone if you want at the very end. And so it's really interesting. Some, stats you can share with other people and things that just give you talking points at your next dinner party, I guess. Okay, so we're going to go through the current state of health in America according to John F. Kennedy Jr. and some wherever he got his information. I'm assuming it's credible. So let's go through it. Number one, the CDC reports that 90% of healthcare costs goes toward chronic disease. That's crazy. Ingest that for just a second. 90% of all healthcare costs goes toward chronic disease. That means those are manageable care diseases that we can actually take care of through diet and exercise and various other ways of managing these diseases. Okay, next slide. 40% of every dollar, or so 40 cents, goes toward disease that could be prevented by eating healthy food. So 40% of every $1 goes toward disease that could be prevented by eating healthy food. We spend 3 times more than the European Union on healthcare, yet our life expectancy is 5 years lower. So a lot of money being spent. If the US reduced obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's to Japanese levels, we would save $600 billion a year in federal spending on healthcare. So pretty crazy. 1/3 of US teens have prediabetes, and over 35% are overweight or obese, and 20% of young adults have NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Ugh. These statistics are bleak. This one I thought was really interesting. 77% of military-aged Americans aren't eligible for military service because of diet-related conditions. Yikes. What if we had a major war and we have slim pickings on the military-aged people that can serve? And yeah, 33% of our population can be picked from, right? That's manageable through diet and exercise. And so that needs to be reversed. Childhood obesity is 5 times greater than countries like France. I'm not sure if I said this one, but the US has the highest obesity and type 2 rate in the developing world. And 42 million Americans rely on SNAP. Commonly purchased items currently allowed with SNAP benefits include candy, chips, and pop. And 78% of SNAP recipients are currently enrolled in Medicaid. And 90% of Medicaid spending goes to spending on chronic disease. So you kind of look at the reverse of this. If 90% of Medicaid spending goes to spending on chronic disease, then, and if we know that chronic disease can be managed by diet and a lot of various other things that we can do to manage it, then why are SNAP benefits allowing this? And so that's going to be a big change coming down the pipeline with the new rules and the new guidelines. So let's talk about who this is going to affect. This is going to affect anyone who's in the federal nutrition programs. So 1 in 4 Americans are roughly in that. So this is going to affect them in a great way, positive. It's going to be so good for the kids and what they're going to be able to have access to in their breakfast and lunch programs compared to what they have access to now. Also, low-income families, pregnant women, and young children on WIC. That's 8 million beneficiaries. Of course, the SNAP program, which we talked about, which is food stamps recipients. This is going to be a lot of it is through the eligible foods that are going to be available in all the different grocery stores. So what they're making grocery stores do in the next couple years as they roll this out is that they're going to make them have a lot more eligible SNAP food items that are really good for them that kind of follow this new pyramid. Military personnel and veterans. So cafeteria meals to veterans hospitals, things like that. Meals on Wheels, senior nutrition programs, and then hospitals and institutions that are federally funded will all be affected by the new food guide pyramid. So let's talk about what the indirect effect is. So our general public is going to get different education inside of the public schools. So your health teachers are all going to be teaching the new guidelines. You think about healthcare professionals like our doctors and our dietitians and nutritionists are all going to be learning these new guidelines and speaking these to their patients in the office and being much more proactive in their approach to how we handle protein, for example. And so we'll talk about protein here in a little bit, but I've always been beating the drum about protein for years, and to actually see that they're doubling the amount of protein that people are going to be told they should eat, to me is like such a huge win, because I'm like, yes, finally the win on getting the protein up in people's diets. And so it's going to be coming directly from the federal government, which does change guidelines, and it changes from like that top down approach. And so I'm pretty excited about that. This is going to influence like grocery stores and what the grocery store stock and how that influences people's buying powers. It will shift consumer demand as well. So potentially boosting the need for meat and dairy products in the grocery stores and stuff like that. The Secretary of Agriculture spoke at the meeting as well 2 weeks ago, and she said that we're going to be having a heavier reliance on our food industry in the United States. So our dairy farms and our cattle farmers and all the farmers in the United States will be getting more of a boost because of that. So we'll be relying more heavily on the protein sources, not so much on grain sources. Let's talk about the history of the food guide pyramid. It's like those of us who are old enough to remember the one in 1992, that's the one on the top here. That was our original food guide pyramid that was the first ever that the United States came up with. And as you can see, the 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. Now, all of you that have been in No Bad Days for a while, you're like, oh, wow. It's like, no wonder why that's just setting somebody up for insulin resistance. And this was in 1992. So now we've had, what, 33 years of a food guide pyramid that has really pushed carbohydrates as the main source of what you should eat. Okay. Now we've had other food pyramids, but all of them have a heftier serving of grain if you look at the grain portions in all of these. Okay. And then this is the new one down here. But let's just start off with the history lesson of some of these. I'll go quick. The classic version, most people remember, is the triangle with different layers. And at the top, we use sparingly fats, oils, and sweets, but they lump all fat up here. And as we know now that there's a lot of fats that are actually good for us, omega-3 fats, for example, avocado oils and olive oils and things like that. And so we shouldn't necessarily use those sparingly. We know now that the Mediterranean diet is very healthy for people, and doctors are really advocating for the Mediterranean diet. So obviously this doesn't work. And then of course our meat, poultry, and milk and cheese, all of that right now doubled in the new pyramid. So they had it as a pretty small portion. Their old guidelines stated that you would eat 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for protein. I'll talk more about that later, but it is now doubled. And then of course, fruits and vegetables is still a big push. So let's go over here to the other one, the My Pyramid. They added the steps here because they're like, okay, of course, food is important, but you also need to get your exercise in. So they did something right there. Oh, I also wanted to say in this last pyramid over here, if you all remember, those of you who are like 35 to, well, maybe 40 and older, you'll remember the fads in the 80s and 90s of low fat, high carb. Okay. That's what this food pyramid promoted. Low fat, high carb. Okay. Let's go back over here. In this next model, we see what they call it, the My Pyramid, a revised abstract version with vertical colored wedges. So instead of horizontal layers. They added stairs for physical activity. Proportions were similar, but they're apparently more personalized to what the person would eat, but they are heavily green focused. And then we have our My Plate that came out in 2011, and the My Plate emphasized the half fruit and veggies of your whole plate, with grains taking up another like full quarter of your plate and proteins. Well, no, maybe a little more than a quarter. Proteins less than that. And then a little side of dairy, which is funny because not every one of you can eat dairy, right? And so to actually focus on that as being something that's a side that you should eat is kind of laughable because not all people tolerate it well. And it's one of the top 5 allergens for most people. All right, you guys, let's talk about the new food guide pyramid. You can see that it's a reverse pyramid. It's totally flipped upside down, and that the majority of the top of it is vegetables and protein. And so we're going to talk more about that one here in a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. So kind of as an emphasis here is their motto is eat real food. This is the new motto of the food pyramid. High quality protein that has nearly double from a previous recommendation of 0.8 grams per kilogram, so body weight, to now 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. I'm 156 pounds. So if I were to convert 156 pounds to kilograms, it'd be 71 pounds or 71 kilograms. And if you multiply that by 0.8, it was telling me that I only needed to eat, what did I put down here? Oh, let me just do the math because I don't think I wrote it down. But 71 times 0.8 is only 56 grams of protein a day. Now, all of you know how much I tell you to eat in terms of protein. That's laughable, right? But I will tell you, I posted a video a long time ago on No Bad Days Instagram page, and it was me talking about how much protein you should eat per day. And a dietitian got on there and she just reamed me for telling people that you're telling people to eat way too much protein. And she's like, "Where's your proof?" I'm like, of course, she's a dietitian she was actually currently in school to be a dietitian. I'm like, that's because the schools are teaching her the 0.8 grams, 0.8 grams of protein per pound of whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. And I was like, providing her all this evidence of newer studies that have been done that are promoting the 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And she didn't reply back. Now that the new food guide pyramid's coming out, I'm like, see, I told you. That's like, this is what is needed, and it has been needed for a long time. And just because it says it in a textbook, and that textbook is old and outdated, like we need some new science telling us what we should be doing here. And so if I take 1.6 and I multiply it by 71, which is my kilogram weight, it's 113 grams of protein. So it went from like 56 grams recommendation to 113. So you're just basically doubling the amount of protein that is telling you to eat. So it's pretty exciting. That is a big change. It's also the first time that ultra processed has been a term that's been used, and it's being called out. And they're saying absolutely no ultra processed food. And so this is why our children are going to have such a better chance at growing up than like Peyton's generation did. It's like, I think my generation didn't grow up with as much processed food as maybe they do have today. And so already several companies have joined forces with the MAHA movement to get like red food dye out of a lot of our food. So that's one step in the right direction. But when we think of ultra processed food, think of cereals and pop. And I mean, there's so many out there, you guys, you know what I'm talking about, just not the healthy stuff that we see, the Cheetos and Lay's potato chips and things like that. And then another thing that I want to mention is that they did not take out the recommendation for saturated fat to still be 10% of your ingestion of fat for the day. So of all the fat that you are allowed to eat, only 10% of that should be saturated fat. And that has stayed with these new recommendations as well. But I think it's interesting, our old food guide pyramid used to say you should cut out cholesterol and keep it low fat. Nowadays, they're not saying you need to keep things low fat. They're just still a little cautious on the saturated fat side of things. And I think it's probably a good idea to be a little cautious there, because some people have a genetic propensity toward building plaque in their arteries, and saturated fat is the leading cause of that plaque buildup. And so it's okay to be cautious a little bit on saturated fat. You just need to know your own personal genetic predestiny for that kind of thing. And I think it's good if you have, like, I have the LP little a gene, unfortunately. I was tested for it and I was like, dang it, I have that. My number's high. And I never have to get tested again. Once you're high, you're high. You have that genetic propensity toward coronary artery disease and plaque buildup. And so I'm probably someone who needs to be not on a carnivore diet, right? Like if I just ate all meat, I'd be eating a lot more saturated fat than my body probably could do with, because I just don't process fat very well in my body. We just need to know ourselves, right? And be cautious of our own need there. All right, let's move on to the next slide. I thought this was interesting. I watched another video today where a doctor was explaining just the definition of food. I love this definition. That which is eaten to sustain life, preserve the growth and repair of tissues, and provide nourishment. And so if we look at ultra-processed food as the exact opposite of this, right? If I were to eat potato chips, it's 100% like fat and carbs. There's no protein. And if we know that protein builds every cell of the human body, but I didn't have any protein, I'm not going to have a nourishing something to grow healthy cells with, right? So I need the fat, the protein to do that. And the carbs just come in and provide fuel for those cells, but it doesn't help me build a healthy cell. So when we think about ultra processed food as just, one macro or two macros, mostly fat and sugar, then it's not really a food. It's like something that isn't going to sustain, preserve, grow, repair tissue, or nourish you. So I think that's how we should look at our food. And when we look at like a protein bar from Costco, right? The Kirkland protein bars. I love those things. I love like looking at it today going, this is kind of an ultra processed food in a way, but it has little ingredients, very little ingredients ultimately. And it's a carb, protein, and fat, and it could sustain my life. It could preserve the growth and repair of tissue and provide nourishment to me. So it is a food when I define it that way. But when I look at other things, I can kind of compare it against this definition and say, that's not a food. And so I was talking with a client today in a meeting, in a one-on-one, and we were talking about the whole 30 and like doing whole 30 as potential. And we were talking about how whole 30 was beneficial because it's real food. And I was like, well, yeah, all the things that are whole 30, you basically can recognize that live on the earth or have grown from the earth, have flown in the air, that walk, crawl, whatever. It's definitely something that is defined as food. And then she asked me a good question. She's like, I see products that are on the shelves that say Whole 30 approved. So it's a product, it's processed, right? I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. It's Whole 30 approved probably because it's minimally processed and that it doesn't have a lot of ingredients in there that are bad for you. So it's important that we read labels and we know that food item is going to sustain us, preserve our growth and repair of tissues, and provide nourishment. So give me some examples. You guys come off of mute. Give me some examples of maybe packaged food that you have in your pantries that you feel still fulfill the definition of food. Something that might be Whole 30 approved or healthy, but it's packaged.
Protein powder.
Peyton said protein powder.
Yeah. Meal.
Desi, you said what?
That was Stacy.
I said oatmeal.
Oatmeal. Yep. Okay.
Nuts.
Yeah. Nuts are like a single item. And I guess oatmeal is too, but it's still somewhat prepared, right? It has to go from a shell, be cut, prepared and put into a package. But like you think almond butter or peanut butter is even more processed, but it's still almost a single ingredient item food. It's just blended. Yeah. So it's less processed than, let's say, protein powder, but some protein powders are even less processed than others. And the way they're processed can provide better quality of nutrition than others. And so that's an interesting concept too, is to think about the different levels of quality of certain products that are out there that look the
Then-
same. Mhm.
Corn thins or like rice cakes, those
Yeah.
would be processed.
Yeah, like a tortilla, for example, or like a corn tortilla or corn chip even by
Mhm.
itself is only a couple ingredients. And so it would still be considered a food versus ultra processed. But yeah, we get into the ultra processed when we just think about a Frankenstein chemical being added to a food to make it something that tastes like food but isn't really food. Right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of those Quest protein chips or the Catalina Crunch.
Yeah,
Or
because this could be
processed.
considered more on the side of ultra processed, possibly. Yeah. 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 Unfortunately, they're fun to eat and they're good.
No.
But you're right, they're expensive too. And you're like, is this really doing anything for me? It's just giving me some variety. And so it's probably okay to have it every once in a while, but not make it your main staple of protein or something like that. Yeah. But if the majority of our food, 80% of our food looks like it came out of the ground or, was butchered or we knew what that was and it's a mono food, like you say, okay, it's a one ingredient food, that's really going back to the basics of what we want to eat, right? But then realistically, not everything is going to look like that or be easily accessible for us. And so that's where we get into some of these packaged foods that make it easier for us to eat and sustain our high protein levels. Think cottage cheese, for example, or something like a protein powder, like Peyton mentioned. So when we're talking about how do we help you all reduce the risk of chronic disease, which is, like we said, 90% of our healthcare budget is going to chronic disease. If the root cause of all chronic disease is insulin resistance and we can do something about it, then we can reduce the budget in terms of healthcare costs, right? So how do we help get rid of insulin resistance, reversing it? There's 3 things you can do easily in this challenge that's coming up, or if you're working with us and you're not in the challenge, you can do these things as well. So let's talk about each one of them. A low carb diet. What does that look like for you? Could be different if you are truly suffering from insulin resistance versus someone who is not and just wants to lose fat off their body. But if you know you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, you have that diagnosis, maybe you're on Ozempic or some sort of medication like metformin, your doctor may have already told you need to go on a ketogenic diet. If you want to try a ketogenic diet with me, that's absolutely fine. We can do that. We just need to adjust your macros to where you're only eating 20 to 50 grams total in carbs per day. And that is subtracting your fiber. So that's including net carbs. So that is a pretty significant drop in carbohydrate ingestion. That's a very low carbohydrate number. But for most of you who are doing this program, we have you on a moderate low carb. So it's where you don't exceed more than 100 grams of carbs per day. So if your current number is exceeding 100 grams of carbs per day and you want to like experiment with dropping that down a little bit below 100 and upping your fat, and we can do that. So just tell me before the challenge, hey, let's play around with my macros a little bit. I want to try a real low carb diet and see if that will help reverse some of the insulin resistance. What they're finding in studies is that those who do the ketogenic diet actually do the best in terms of reversing their insulin resistance much faster. But even still, on the moderate to low carb, you can still help, you can still lose fat and get that insulin resistance to kind of go away, but it takes a little bit longer when you're eating more carbohydrates. If you do actually suffer from insulin resistance or have this diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, I highly recommend wearing a continuous glucose monitor to make sure that the diet that you are eating isn't causing spikes in your blood sugar on a day-to-day basis. And if it is, then we need to work on that too. Okay. Next thing is that you are on a don't eat frequently diet. So we would probably switch you over to 3 meals a day if you want to be. I know my diet plan, the one that you guys all have access to, is 5 meals a day. So and that actually helps too. I mean, it depends on how you structure those meals because we don't want you eating like, a ton of, hold on a second. Mindy wants in. Let me get her into the call. Okay. So for example, for insulin resistance, many experts are favoring a 3 meal a day or even 2 meal a day with balanced nutrient dense meals. But if you eat over 5 or if you eat 5 meals a day, it's can actually cause blood sugar stabilization. So you just have to experiment with yourself and say, well, I do better on 5 meals a day. No, I do better on 3. And we're going to know that if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor. So that would be one way to double check and see for yourself, is just experiment. Now, how do you do on 5? How do you do on 3? Okay, you do better with 3. We're going to stick with that. Because if you do 3 meals a day, your body actually gets a little bit of insulin rest periods. And that can help with that insulin resistance, because too much insulin in the body is why you cause insulin resistance in the first place. And so if we give you some insulin rest with not eating so frequently, you might actually do better in the long run. And then exercise, avoid going more than 2 days in a row without exercising. It's important for blood sugar or blood glucose management, because the main rationale for exercising at least every other day is that the effects of the last bout of cardiorespiratory activity on insulin sensitivity are lost after 24 to 48 hours in most cases. So you need to do 2 days a week of strength training with heavy lifting, so higher volume or higher weight, lower rep lifting of weights. And then on the other days where you're not weightlifting, that you're doing your cardiovascular training. So you might find 1 day a week you're doing high intensity interval training, and the other days of the week you're doing cardiovascular training. So you're in a moderate zone of heart rate. And most watches, Fitbits, and things like that will tell you what zones you're in. So being in the moderate zone is important for 30 minutes or more a day. So you're always doing something. If you're insulin resistant, you need to be working out pretty much 5 out of 7 days a week, shooting for about 150 minutes a week of exercise, which is 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. I'm going to let you guys come off of mute and let's chat about this, because that was my last slide. And let's open it up for discussion. What did you guys learn? What was your biggest takeaway?
Julian, it's Ruby.
Hey.
So, hi. So, if you plan to have 5 meals, would you recommend to put the 2 meals with the 3? Or
Yes, I would. I would still recommend you eat all the calories you're given in that day or need to eat that day, but you just lump the snacks into your other meals. So you take the 2 in the middle of the day and either push them to breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
so we would have to eat more? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't like eat less just because you're skipping those 2 snacks. You actually have to still eat your full calories and macros, but just do 3 big meals.
Thank you.
So what I would recommend, Ruby, and for all of you, is take your total number of protein for the day that you're being told to eat and divide it by 3 or 5. So you go, okay, I have to eat 140 grams of protein today. And if I divide that by 3, I'm having to eat 46 grams of protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you try and eat dinner before 6 so that you have a long fast period overnight, so that when you wake up in the morning, you're pretty ready to eat breakfast, right? So then or if you really want to try the 2 meal a day, then you're got to fit all your calories in 2 meals and you're skipping breakfast to do that. So you're doing an intermittent fast. So maybe you just try that a couple days a week. You don't have to do that every day, but it might be something to give a shot at. Say, hey, I still got to eat my 1,250 calories, but I'm going to do it in 2 meals. So 2 600-calorie meals, something like that. So very filling, but our bodies are an experiment, right? So you guys have the in-body to use as an experiment. If you get a CGM machine, you have that to experiment with to see how the food you eat affects your blood sugar. What other takeaways do we have or questions? Those stats were pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
Had
I
anyone
think
heard?
about, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The 1/3 of US teens, that stat, that's like my age group. Well, I'm not a teenager, but young adults, I guess, having the fatty liver disease. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. It's like, what I'm really thankful for this movement right now and this new pyramid, because so many of these kids, they don't even know about this stuff. And so we need you guys that are coming here and taking care of yourself to come and help us too.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to trickle down into their education and their health classes in school. So they'll eventually get this information, but it's going to happen over the next couple years. This is the new food guide pyramid from 2025 to 2030. So it's a 5-year span, and then they'll make adjustments at the end of that 5 years.
I just came from watching my granddaughter do gymnastics. So it's like a huge warehouse with a bunch of little kids in there. And like more than half of them are overweight, like huge bellies, can't even do a somersault. And they're young. They're like, 12 and younger to like 4-year-olds, I think.
That's so sad.
And then like she gets lunch at school, and I always ask her like, what did you have for lunch today? And she like tells me like two or three things. And I'm like, is that what you chose, or that was, what you got to pick? But still, the choices are not very healthy. So
Yeah.
I'm excited because I have 3 more coming up. 3 more grandbabies coming up. So that'll be good.
I think it's just maybe a product of people not understanding, right? One, they don't know what they don't know. But then on the other hand, it's the cost of food, right? It's a heavier cost for higher protein diets and eat vegetables and fruits. But they were saying on the kind of State of the Union address that they've done the stats on that, and they're out there on cost. And they actually say it's more costly in terms of your medical bills if you don't do those things in the end. And so it really is just trading one cost for another down the road, along with disease and sickness and despair and not liking even the way you feel and look. And so it's like, oh, we got to train up younger kids to care about that stuff. But it starts with the parents, right? And feeding them.
Yeah. Something else I think we need to really focus on is European healthcare, because they're very healthy over there and they don't pay as much as we do. But like our medical revolves around pharmaceutical companies. And so I'm hoping that gets fixed also, because I think it needed to start there. And once we can fix that, then I think everything else will fall into place.
I think so too. And it sounds like it is starting to be more like they're starting to make adjustments with the affordability of certain pharmaceuticals that are helping people with obesity, like Ozempic, for example. But yeah, if we could just make it so that people don't need Ozempic in the first place, then we're going to be better off as a nation in the long run, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, like the lady that did our last Zoom, like she doesn't take insurance because they were telling her what she could and couldn't do. It's like they want us to stay sick so that we can continue to come back to them, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, it's not only that, it's just it's probably the pharmaceutical companies in cahoots with the food makers, right? To keep the food making us sick, and so that we keep needing the drugs, right? It's just this whole and I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's why they're trying to really crack down on these ultra processed foods, is because they know that if you ingest them, you will get sick from them. And so the more we can take charge of our own health and avoid those at all costs, then we're going to be better off as a person and a nation, and ultimately spending a lot less money on healthcare costs. It's up to us to make that decision for ourselves and to really just start to clean up our own diets, which then hopefully trickles down into our families, and just got to educate them and say, hey, did you know there's a new food guide pyramid and this is what they're recommending? So this is going to start coming into your lunches at school. But let's start at home, because you eat most of your food at home. So what does that look like? Healthy dinner, right? And what does that look like for kids to have a double portion of protein than maybe they're having now?
I just thought of something when you said something that we consider food that's in our pantry is like spaghetti sauce. So I have a coworker, he makes his own spaghetti sauce, he makes his own pizza bread. And so yeah, I think making our own, so all that processed stuff isn't in there, also it's a good idea.
That's awesome. Like growing it out of the ground and then like making the things. Jen knows all about this. She's really good at all that. Some of you are really good at gardening and making your food. And it's like, would be awesome if we could get back to that. But like spaghetti sauce, for example, I take a can of tomato sauce only, organic tomato sauce from Kirkland, and I add the spices to it. That's how I make my spaghetti sauce. It's like, I don't buy it off the shelf at $3 and some odd cents a jar. I just tomato sauce and spices, and there you go. Easy peasy. So yeah, it runs the gamut of like what is homemade. But the more we can get away from the ultra processed foods, the better. So like when we shop the store, staying out of the middle section of the store and really shopping the perimeter and kind of finding all of our food there first, and then going in for a few items. And then saying, what can I make on my own? I think that's important.
Into the Whole Foods, like you said, I was going to go kind of with what Stacy was saying. Like, I'm excited that the food pyramid is flipped upside down now, and to see what that's going to bring in our school systems for our grandkids, right? So, and then as far as like food stamps and what the regulations and guidelines are going to be around what people can buy, because I think that's going to cut out a lot of the obesity. If they can't be buying all of those ultra processed things, then it's going to help them make healthier choices instead. So I'm excited for it
Too. Yeah. I think it'll, like they said, it's not going to be an overnight thing. They've just fixed this. It's been a long time making. The last year, I think they've been working on it. Finally was revealed this month. And so 2 weeks ago, it was revealed at that conference. So I recommend you guys go back and watch the conference. It was really interesting. I can post a link to it.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And then there were several speakers. It took about 30 minutes to listen to it altogether.
Something else that was very exciting was in the military. My daughter is in the Guard, so she's in training all week or work. I don't know what you call it, and she was like, Mom, the DFAC doesn't have very good food in there. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're the government. The government provides the least they can. So that's exciting too, that I'm going to have to share with her that she should start seeing better food in the DFAC.
Yeah. Hopefully it's quicker than later, right?
Yeah.
I hope it goes forward into the colleges too. And I know it's kind of where my daughter lives in the South or the Midwest, I guess, that everything at her school, there's not much she can eat because she's gluten free. They deep fry bread and deep fry just about everything that they serve in the meal halls there. So she's constantly then going to eat out because there's no kitchen in her dorm either. So it's
Yeah, no, Desi, I think at her school, because it's a private Christian university, it's not going to have that federal like direct contact, but it's going to have
Right.
the direct, because the dietitian that's working behind the scenes to help with the meal planning for the college will have the new information. And
Yeah.
it would be unethical of them to not follow the new guidelines, and implement those into what they do as a profession in their work.
yeah.
Mhm. So
I did hear something else too, that they were making the celiac a disability that they'd have to provide foods that are definitely gluten free and celiac safe.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. No. They didn't mention anything about that, but I'm sure that there's so much paperwork to read through and like
Oh, yeah.
go through. I just was scratching the surface tonight to give you guys kind of an overview of the things that they're doing. And just so you were aware that it's now out there. Maybe you have anyone, this is the first time they're hearing of it. Okay. So yeah, it's just that's kind of sad that it's not out there really in our media and stuff. So we'll probably I'll re-record this video and get it out on my Instagram page, so you guys aren't a part of it. So I don't post you guys, publicly, but this information is important to get out there. What else?
I didn't know about the red dye thing going away. So I'm excited for that too. It's so bad for you.
Oh yeah. Oh, another thing that just happened with this the MAHA movement is that the vaccination schedule just came out, a brand new one in early January. And so all new children, babies that are going through for their vaccines, they're not recommending that you don't do your vaccines. What they're saying is, here's our new recommended schedule of vaccines so that the child doesn't have all the onslaught all at once of all the vaccines. And so that changed this month as well. So it's a new update. So kind of a lot of changes to let your family know about, especially those of you who are, have grandkids or new grandbabies. And it's going to trickle down. I mean, of course, it has to all the hospitals, all the doctors, everything. Again, they would be unethical if they didn't follow the new vaccine recommendations and guidelines. These are all studied, peer-reviewed articles that they're using to create these guidelines, and they definitely use the USDA and these guidelines as their backbone. And now they were quoting the certain big doctors associations were behind all of this. So like the presidents of the American Academy of Medical Doctors or something was there at the press conference. And so basically everyone's on board with all of this and excited about it, which is fun. Yeah. Any other thoughts or anything you guys have heard? Like, Monica, I'd be curious from your perspective if you know anything about Medicare. He mentioned something about 50% of Medicare projected long-term deficit, or $5,000 per family annually would be the cost if we kept going on this same trajectory.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the beneficiaries that we come in, they all have chronic illness. They all have high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer. We've seen a lot of cancer patients here recently. Dialysis. Yeah. A lot of it. Mm-hmm.
And so is it like basically going to be insolvent if we don't fix this chronic disease problem with regard?
Oh, most definitely. And I think also moving our bodies. I think there's so many of us that don't just go for walks. One good thing about the military is they include their physical fitness a part of their workday. They can get off an hour to go work out, go be physically fit. It would be nice to see employers being able to do that, have not only your lunch break, but have extra time to go work out. That would be great if we had employers able to do that.
Yeah, so true. Really good point. It's like most people get a half-hour lunch break or something. Yeah. That's not very long to go make your food and actually sit down and eat your food. A lot of people are having to do it while they're still working.
Yeah. And that's where you get, your burnout, because you don't get time to walk away.
Do you know if the WIC program is going to change their foods that they provide to the recipients?
Yes, they are. They didn't say specifically when that would be rolled out, but they said it's going to be like a year or two, because it's just such a huge thing to accomplish, is to get those foods onto the grocery store shelves that have the barcode scan for the SNAP benefits and the WIC benefits and stuff. And so it's going to take a while, but it's going to move in that direction the next 2 years. So you'll see a big change.
I remember when I was younger, we were on, the food stamps. My mom had those, and there was no way that we were allowed to use. I mean, we couldn't buy candy or pop or any of the junk food with those. I remember my mom would always have to scrounge through for some change for my brother and I to get a candy bar or something, or a piece of gum, because you couldn't buy them with the food stamps.
That's so interesting.
They did get changed though. So that's typically how she found us time to have a candy bars, because you would give them like however much in food stamps, cash, and then you could get coins back. So if it was under $1,
Nowadays it's all on a card, right?
Yes. But
Yeah.
I didn't know that had changed so much. And I went to the grocery store with my sister a while back, and she was buying all kinds of junk food. And I thought that she'd have to separate it, but she didn't.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Have you guys seen that or like had experience with it? Anyone else?
Yeah, I've seen it quite a bit, just people going through at the grocery and just seeing everything that they have on, on the line there, and it's just like it's everything from, you know, T-bone steaks to then Monster Energy drinks or something, then all this junk, and then you see them swipe their, you know, state card, and I'm like, oh, well, that's not great at all. So I've noticed that for years, and it's just so discouraging to see what was approved for people to buy. It's like, well, that's the problem right there. It's all the crap that you
Yeah.
shouldn't have.
Yeah, hopefully that'll all like change in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and they'll open up the allowance of more healthy foods, hopefully. I can't imagine any healthy food is disallowed right now. Does anyone know that answer?
Well, it's not really food stamps. A lot of the Medicare Advantage plans have the wellness cards. You can buy healthy groceries with that card, but some of them don't allow you to get bread, like certain breads, like maybe bread from the deli. Sometimes they let it go through, sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know if it has something to do with the scanning or maybe Walmart versus Fred Meyer's. I don't know. We can't figure that piece out.
Yeah.
I bet it has something to do with the barcodes and the scanning on that.
That's
end.
what
Like
I'm
it's not
wondering.
in the wellness program yet or something, but I know that there's pretty much nothing that I saw that was that they were unable to buy other than alcohol or cigarette tobacco or something like that. But it seemed like Amy said, you know, some energy drinks and some all of the other things, and then kind of seems I don't know, trying to make you sick and dependent.
Yeah.
Also, hopefully that they'll bring back teaching kids how to cook. I mean, if they're encouraging more healthy foods, those require cooking. And hopefully they bring back home economics. I know some of them are budget cut where you don't get that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That would be.
I know East Valley School District in the high school still does foods. They call it foods. So that'll be interesting. I don't know what that is. A kid was going to take foods class over weights class the other day. And my husband's like, if you're going to play football, you're going to be in weights. The kid was trying to get out of doing weights and take foods. He's like, what? Oh, anyways, I'm like, it's probably not a bad idea. But at the same time, he needs foods and weights. But who knows what they're teaching in there and how long it'll take for the teachers to get the new memo. And like all the textbooks are so far behind, right? Like how long it'll take for the textbooks to all change. And you think about what kids are learning in school today with their old textbooks is absolutely not what they should be learning today. And it's like, I don't know if those mandates will change. Like, this book is so old, why do I have to teach out of this, right? So it's like, can I teach from what I just learned in this press conference? Is that okay? I'm just curious how that is in high schools and federally run school districts and stuff like that. Because you would think it would be okay since it is a new federal mandate. It's like, but then again, there is rules over what they're teaching in the approved curriculums. It's all just crazy. But
For WIC, when I was on WIC, when my kids were younger, they're 30 and 27 now, but we only got like, if I was pregnant, I got like a little bit of extra stuff like beans, and I can't really remember because that was a long time ago.
Milk and
But
cheese.
nowadays they get like $30 to go towards vegetables only, which they didn't have that when I was on WIC. So that's something WIC has changed over the years, where they're giving them like a voucher for fruits and vegetables only, because, you know, it was just like milk, cheese, and cereal, I think. Yeah.
I think you got better when you were pregnant, Stacy, because peanut butter was healthy.
Peanut butter was one. Yeah. Yeah. Peanut butter, beans. I remember getting dried beans. But yeah, I know they give vegetable vouchers now, which they didn't used to. So
that's good, though.
yeah.
It is. And you can use the vegetable and fruit vouchers at like the farmers market.
Farmers market. Yes. 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 Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
How did you know you're actually buying a vegetable if it doesn't have a barcode attached to it at a farmer's market?
Because the farmer's market accepts the voucher
Oh, okay.
as payment, form of payment.
Is it like a paper voucher?
I don't know.
Nowadays,
I feel like everything's electronic now, but
yeah. Yeah. Catholic
Yeah.
Charities has been doing some of them for those that are low income in addition to WIC. And they have it like on a card. And there's $50 on the card. And there's certain participating vendors that get reimbursed from the program to those farmers. But you can get fresh vegetables with those participating vendors.
Oh, that makes more sense. So the
Yeah.
vendor itself is already participating, so they get that money
Yeah.
back. Okay, got it.
Yeah. But it's really good. I mean, you get fresh garlic, fresh tomatoes.
Okay. Well, this was enlightening. I think there's a lot to learn from you guys tonight and some new information that's come down that we all need to know and we can pass on to other people. I will let you guys go. It is 8 o'clock and we started at 7, so give us an hour to hang out together. But let me give you some announcements before we go for those of you who are on the call. Our next call with each other will be on February 16th. Peyton is going to be doing a Zoom call at 7 p.m. on Monday night. She's going to be talking about values, and you guys are going to do a values assessment. And then on the 23rd is our in-person meeting. It's going to be at 6 p.m. instead of 7. We're increasing the time because we're going to do a vision board night. So you guys are going to do your values on the 16th, and we're going to do vision board night on Monday, the 23rd. So just a week later. And I will supply the things you need for the vision board night. But if you guys have old magazines or like fun things you want to bring for words or stuff that would be fun for vision board night, bring it. So that is happening on the 23rd of February. So that's what's coming up in February for our calls. Otherwise, we're starting a challenge coming up. So that's why the calls are kind of like different. And doing back-to-back weeks because we have weigh-in on February 9th and 10th for the challenge. And we're doing it Monday and Tuesday night for a reason, because the 8th is a Super Bowl and the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to be watching the game and not wanting to do any weigh-ins after the Super Bowl. I'm sure you guys don't want to that night either. So we're going to do the next night and Tuesday night for weigh-ins for that. All right. Any questions or anyone need to ask me a question while we're still here? Any thoughts? All right.
Thank you.
Hi, good night.